Hey everyone, it's your boy Baron Baptiste. This is a place where we can tell the truth and the truth can be told. We're tearing down the walls of mediocrity and building a community of excellence and challenging the drift towards mediocrity. This is where we can confront, not only confront, but transform the default state of humanity that human beings live in society, individually, collectively. The world is in a conspiracy for mediocrity, I like to say. Not everyone, not all, but it seems like a great majority of people are the walking, sleeping. How would you say that, David? Good to have you, David.
Thank you, Baron. Yeah, the sleeping dead, and they just need to be awakened by some sort of. Unfortunately, people will not awaken until they're ready. And so even when people are in a deep sleep, you could have alarms going off, and even people that sleep through a fire in their home. What's it going to take to wake people up? That's the question.
Yeah,
the sleeping dead.
It's like the lights are on and nobody's home. But it's interesting. I also wonder how much of it has also to do with the world being full of false solutions.
Boy,
whether that's drugging or just distracting yourself, just keeping yourself entertained, keeping yourself distracted, keeping yourself numbed and anesthetized. And because that is the solution, those are the solutions that the world offers up. You don't see a lot of solutions towards truth and coming back to reality and coming back to the truth of who you are in your essence as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of talk like that. In fact, it seems nowadays, if you shine a little too brightly, the tear down culture, the call out culture, the virtue signaling culture, like crabs in a bucket, you're like getting a little too high up toward the edge and they just want to pull you back down. And I think then that leaves people frightened. It leaves people scared and people shrinking back because the world makes a pretty strong case that if you step up, step out, shine out a little too bright, that it will come for you. They'll come for you. They make examples of a lot of people. You get a little too bright, a little too successful, a little too excellent, a little too above the crowd. They'll pull you back down. So it's okay. That's what happens if I shine out, beam out too brightly. But we are here to say that's all a lie. Don't listen to the sea of sameness, the sea of all the same, the groupthink. That is just the way of the world. It's been here since the beginning of humankind, I think.
Yeah.
It's nothing new.
I'm reminded of the movie I Am Legend. I don't know if you ever saw that. Will Smith is like the last person left. Everybody else is turned into sort of these vampire type creatures. And he's a doctor experimenting, trying to figure out how to turn people back into humans again. But there's a scene in that where these vampires, they all huddle together as the sun goes down. They go into this dark place and they huddle together, and Will Smith wanders into this huddle, and all of a sudden these creatures are after him. And that's basically what you're describing, is that when you shine, when you stand apart, when you become authentically original in your ways of being and thinking and speaking and all the rest of it, when you become authentic in that sense, you put yourself on the radar. And it's a very dangerous and difficult place to be, because when people know that you're not one of them, there's something in them that wants to tear you down. And that's what cancel culture is all about. It's all about finding a way to tear down people that somehow neutralize.
Bring everybody down to a sameness, a sea of sameness. Flatten it out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to say before we get into, we have an article to to speak to here today.
Okay.
Before we jump in, I just want to invite everybody, be a part of this transformative journey with us. Subscribe, turn on the notifications, and be at the forefront of change here with us. Share this with your friends and family, people you care about. Let's create a ripple effect of growth and a new kind of freedom in the world, because it really begins with you. It begins with each of us. Yeah, pointing the fingers out, we're waiting for someone else to lead the way or waiting for leaders to show up is not it. It's really where it exists. If real change exists, where does that exist is within you uniquely.
Yep.
And please subscribe. You can also experience these episodes visually on YouTube at my channel, Disrupt the Drift. You can witness the conversation. You can leave a 5-star review if you're listening on audio. That helps us push it out. If you on YouTube, hit the like button, leave comments. Your engagement is what propels it forward and outward to greater numbers of people. But I want to hear from you also. Your questions, your stories, your breakthroughs. Send them to disruptingthedrift@baronbaptiste.com, disruptingthedrift@baronbaptiste.com. This show thrives on your contributions and participation. So there's an article here. Let me pull this up. And it's a poll by Pew Research Poll, PEW Research Poll. So the name of the article here is Christian Minister on Americans Becoming More Spiritual. There's a sort of a yearning is the title here. Christian Minister on Americans Becoming More Spiritual. There's a yearning, it says. There's a yearning in Americans to find a deeper spiritual connection, whether they realize it or not. In a Pew Research poll released earlier this month, approximately 41% of adults said that they have become more spiritual in their lifetimes. By contrast, only 24% said that they have become more religious over time. In addition, 33% of adults said that they have become 33% of adults said they have become less religious in their lifetimes, while only 13% have become less spiritual. Only 13% have become less spiritual, people say. So Bay Area Christian Church Executive Director Russ Ewell on the findings, which he considered encouraging. There's a lot of movement in the landscape, I think, in America with regard to religion and spirituality. I saw this as good news that people are spiritual. Yeah, interesting, huh? A Christian minister in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, of course, my hometown. What say you, David?
Let's look at the question of what does it mean to be spiritual as opposed to religious? Look, religion, these ministers that go to ministerial school and they learn how to preach, no different than going to any other school to learn any other practice. And I do think that we've had enough of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And you and I both love to reference the Bible. So we are people who look to ancient wisdom for guidance in our lives. But at the same time, you don't need all of the intellectual dogma that goes along with it. You really don't need it. It doesn't actually advance your spiritual life. Now here, I looked up in the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, the word spiritual. Number one, it's an adjective of relating to, consisting of, or having the nature of spirit, not material, supernatural. Right there, what could be better than going on a quest to understand the meaning of your life without rules and regulations involved that are constantly telling you what you should and should not do? Because right there, you're limiting your potential for spiritual growth. You really, if you think about it, it becomes like a dogma. It becomes like a society in which you have to go by all the rules that everybody else goes by. And if you don't, then you're on the out. And if you go by all the rules, you believe you say all the things that everybody else says, then you're on the inside crowd. And for me, I had never really cared about being on the inside crowd. Thank God. I wanted to be an authentic and individual a free spirit, an authentic thinker.
Did you get that from your parents, you think?
Oh, of course. Of course I got that from my parents. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, look, when I was up until I was in my late 20s, maybe in my 30s, I didn't think that much about it. But I've always had this sense that there was more to the world than the construct in which most people find themselves in some kind of formalized religion. And it never appealed to me personally, but of relating to, consisting of, or having the nature of spirit, not material, supernatural. That's always been something that's been interesting to me. And of course, it helps that I came from a family, a father who wrote 21 books, who was a theoretical physicist and so on. And you know my dad, you knew him, a very authentically different kind of person who was constantly trying to unearth, just like an archaeologist unearths ancient civilizations. My dad was constantly trying to unearth deep ancient wisdom,
truth
from observing current day events. And trying to add a higher sense of dimensionality to it to make sense of it. Because if you look at the world that we live in today.
And to have people awaken from the drift, just drifting along in the whatever, the social narratives, the ways of living and believing and thinking that we adopt, we inherit.
Yes.
That are either imposed on us or we take them on, we adopt them, but then we're in this kind of group hypnosis.
Yes. Yeah. We're in a giant mass formation. Most people are.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can have mass formations on both the left and the right. You can have people that are deeply,
politically.
Yeah, politically. Yeah. And also philosophically, you can have people on the right, which is Marxism. Sorry, on the left, which is Marxism. And on the right, they attach all of these great isms, the Americanism, to their philosophy, and at the same time, at the core, much of it is programming. So the question is then, how do you become an individual? How do you become an authentic person? How do you break away from the construct of organized religion and not throw out the baby with the bathwater, which is the Jesus and the prophets and the Old Testament and all of the wisdom that's contained therein? How do you retain that without running away from the construct of it, the formality of it? And I think that this is what this minister is addressing, this minister who says that people are becoming more spiritual. I believe that's true because where does it say in the scripture? First of all, Jesus said, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law," right? "Or the prophets, but to fulfill them." He didn't come to do away with that stuff, with the construct of religion. He came to fulfill all of these different aspects that were predicted about it.
Fulfill the spiritual.
Yes.
Into the structural. There's a lot of words and theories and then there's a hypocrisy in that because you're not living a spiritual life. You're living by these external constructs.
That's right.
And then I'm translating for myself what you just said, because that's deep. There's a lot to unlock or unpack there. But it's like there's something about that's missing. So I know when I was growing up, again, I grew up more with yoga and Buddhism and Eastern philosophy. And growing up, I had a judgment toward Christianity in general, because the role models there were like those televangelists, like who was the Jimmy Swaggarts and who are some of those big TV televangelists, and they're Jesus and they're imposing personalities and imposing Jesus on you, and I was like, it never resonated with me. I was like,
neither.
That's just weird and creepy even, and something wasn't right. So I always had this kind of judgment toward it. But when I started growing up on my own more and in my 20s and started discovering the spiritual Jesus and the spiritual side of the Bible and looking more through a mystical lens, it just resonated. It made sense. But here's my point. A lot of the representation of how like the kind of Christian religion is presented out there, I actually think it creates a barrier for most people, everyday people, or seeking people like myself, because I'm like, well, if that's what Christianity is about, or if that's what Jesus is about, I don't want anything to do with it. It took a lot for me to get to the essential kind of wisdom that's there and not see it through my own subjective lens, even. Because what I mean by that, and then I want to hear from you, but when I had this whole belief about myself, this whole view of myself that I wasn't worthy, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't enough of anything, not smart enough, not capable enough, not educated enough, yada, yada. But that was the lens through which I viewed life, because that was my view. That was a view of self. And then that was the outlook, looked in, and then you look out. And so when I would even listen to biblical type things, it was through this subjective lens of I'm not good enough. So I'd read it, and it was like I'd read the Bible, try to read the Bible, a few verses or something, and it would just feel like it was suppressing or squashing me down into I'm already a piece of crap. I'm already no good. And here's more evidence saying, yeah, that I'm just like a piece of crap. So I had to actually outgrow that. As I began to outgrow, or I don't even know if it's outgrow, but something started transforming within me. That old identity of not enough, not good enough, not smart enough, all that, as that kind of transformed, I was able to actually just access the wisdom there in the Bible. I was like, whoa, this is what I've been looking for, actually, because I was a seeker from a very early age, like a very early age, just because my parents had that kind of, but they were looking into New Age, they're looking to Eastern, all this stuff. But when I started to just see it plain and flat and objectively, I was like, it jumped out of off the page. It was like, wow, this is like what I've actually been looking for my whole life. This is what I've been seeking, is just truth and ways of living that actually give order and bring peace and redemption and new beginnings. And a way to live that works.
Yeah, unfortunately, most people come into the world and they enter into a micro culture of their family. And in that micro culture of their family, those people have been programmed to believe whatever it is that they believe, or the flip side of that is they have rebelled against what they've been programmed to believe, and they believe something entirely opposite of what they were taught. And I remember the bumper stickers many years ago, and there are a few still around that says question everything. That was me. I was the guy that questioned everything. What does it mean? Why does it mean what it means? Why do they say these things that they say? What's the point of all of it? And so the problem then that we encounter in finding the meaning of our own lives has something to do with, first of all, being able to question. In China, they don't want Bibles around. In certain countries, in Muslim countries, they'll kill you if you have a Bible. In certain places, they will absolutely execute you if you have a Bible. And why is that? Because there are profound truths contained in the Bible, especially with what I just read from Matthew, talking about how Jesus said, I didn't come to do away with the law, I came to fulfill it. What does it mean to fulfill the law? So I looked it up in the etymology dictionary, and the etymology is the history of the word. And here's what it says. Translating from Latin, from the mid-1300s, do, perform, carry out, consummate, carry into effect, complete, and finish. See, what we have now, and since the time of 2,000 years ago, we had a fulfillment of many things that came as a completion of things that were predicted for thousands of years before that, ideas and concepts and moral ideas that were presented over thousands of years. And then a man came and he fulfilled all of these things, not to do away with any of those things, but to fulfill them, to complete, to finish. And what that means is this, is that we don't have to live by these laws because Jesus came to put the law in our heart. This is what we're talking about now, is that are you a person who has the law put in you from a construct like a church?
From the outside in, like
from the outside in.
A sausage into a sausage skin.
That's
You're
right.
getting stuffed with all this knowledge and the words, the verses, the chapters. Yeah. But it's not just that's not just in Christianity. That's in Buddhism and
it's in every great religion, right?
In Islam. Yeah. When religions impose, then it becomes something from the outside in.
That's right.
And what you're speaking to, and I love this actually, is because I know it's true for me as I've discovered it for myself, is those laws have been, would it be transcribed, impressed onto our hearts, so to speak.
Yes.
Like in our beings, these natural ways of living, like we have them. We hear it thrown around often in personal development and stuff where they say, oh, all the answers are within. What answers? So maybe that's, but it's not, if we're looking at getting to the bottom of it, it's actually, they're inscribed in our beings, in our essential selves. It's inscribed in us, and we can choose to live by those laws, the inner promptings of our conscience, that inner knowing, or we can break ourselves against those.
So you and I
then we find ourselves as disintegrated, broken, right? Separate. We're separate from that authentic power and knowing, inner knowing.
Yes.
We're separate from it, and in that separateness rises up fear, and rises up dark thoughts and feelings and emotions that then translate into body sensations and more feelings, and then the kind of thoughts that come with all of those kind of feelings that are filled in this void of separation, in the gap.
So in this article, the Christian minister says that Americans are becoming more spiritual, and he sees that as progress, and that, as do I, because it's, if you have to have somebody read you a bedtime story every single night because you forget it when you wake up the next morning, you're not absorbing it, okay? So why do people have to have this incredible amount of repetition? Muslims are taught to pray 5 times a day and recite every word of their Bible. Do you really need that?
The Quran, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what it says in John 4:24. And again, I'm not trying to be biblical in this sense, but this is important, because the reason why people are becoming more spiritual is because the repetition of the old way of being a person of faith, it's just not working. Look at how far we've come away from morality in America. All right. So in the Bible, Jesus meets a Samaritan woman at a well.
What's a Samaritan?
A Samaritan woman. So the Jews and the Samaritans didn't like each other back in the day. They wouldn't even have anything to do with each other.
And what was a Samaritan?
The Samaritan was just a different group of people that had different beliefs from the Jewish people.
Yeah.
And so this is a super critical point in the scripture where it talks about, and this is what it says in John 4:24. Starts in John 4:23. But a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such as these to worship him. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship him in spirit and in truth. What he was saying to the woman is that she went to the well of Jacob she went to the well of Jacob, where everybody went to worship, and it was an odd time of the day when the woman went to draw water. And Jesus knew all about her. He said, "You've been married 6 times, and I know who you're living with right now." And the woman was like, "Oh my goodness, how does he know this stuff about me?" But then he was kind to her and asked her to draw him some water from the well. And this changed everything. This moment of this unnamed woman at the well changed everything, because he explained to her, "You don't have to worship here anymore. This time has come now where you will worship in spirit and in truth. You don't have to go to the place of your ancestors anymore." And this is what Christ himself was teaching. that these brick and mortar places where people go to worship, okay, it's great to have fellowship and so on. But at the same time, this is not where you find God necessarily. You might find God.
A lot of these places for worship and churches, and I go once in a while if someone will invite me and to different kinds of churches. And so I get different kind of perspectives of different approaches, and some resonate more than others. But some of them, my point is in what you're speaking to is what they're very feeling based. They're very feeling based, emotion based. And I think that can be very seductive. And you can pack a church like that. Nothing wrong with that. It's probably good for your chemistry, or it's like going to taking a run or a jog or doing a great yoga class, or it elicits good feelings. But I think it's important to distinguish feelings from spiritual.
Yes. Yeah. And by the way,
truth and spirit, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's look back at the word spiritual. The meaning of the word of relating to, consisting of, or having the nature of spirit, not material, but supernatural, or of concerned with the, or affecting the soul. Again, knowledge, though, Jesus, he also said something, and I was going to read more about the Samaritan woman, but he said, the letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life. And so this is the idea that we have to deal with.
And the letter meaning just words on a page.
That's right. That's right.
And if that becomes your God, like it's a kind of idolatry or something, you're worshiping words, the letter, and that killeth the spirit. They're different domains, different places to come from or exist within yourself.
I'm almost there.
Because when you talk, I want to back up a little bit. I want to pull back because I can appreciate religion, and I see that religion can help people. And I think there's an original intent for religion, which it was a kind of organization for people that have gone so far off their path, so to speak. They've lost their inner compass, their inner spiritual compass. They've lost the truth. And then religion and organization gives people an opportunity to recover. The word religion actually is that Latin, religion? I believe it's Latin.
Could be.
Or is it Greek? I think it's Latin, but it has a similar meaning to the word yoga, which means religion means to yoke. The word yoga means to yoke, union with. Religion has that meaning. And so through the proper use of religion can give that kind of organization, that kind of structure for someone in order to come back to truth. But then when it defaults into its own kind of God, so to speak, and you're separated from your own inner connection to your creator, again, there's a separation. And so you see people often in religion, and now with cancel culture and call out culture and virtue signaling, it's very popular. You get on social media, YouTube, and there's all these these kind of cancel culture channels that are attacking religions. And then they bring on, they interview all the people that were in that religion or something. And now and then those people are pulling the victim card and, oh, they did this to me, or they controlled me, or they did this, or they did that. But the thing is, that's not the answer either. So you mentioned, or like throwing out the baby out with the bathwater. Mm-hmm. But to have the wisdom to see the value that may be there. And for some people it works perhaps, but then also, and maybe not, I don't know, but it may serve a purpose for people at certain points in their life.
Yeah, it does.
And if it did not, it's not going to help you to suddenly attack that thing now and make that thing wrong and make that religion or that thing at fault for your faultiness in how you approached it.
All right.
What I'm pointing to is being responsible for your own experience in life.
Right.
Which then is it gives more greater access to finding your own truth. It's like me growing up as a young kid around New Age and just Eastern philosophy and spiritual. I was very spiritual, in air quotes. I was very spiritual, did yoga 5 hours a day during a stint in period in my life. I meditated, I did all the things, but yet I was spiritual, but I didn't have the order. I didn't have the critical kind of direction.
I get it.
It was spiritual, yes, and that's what I want to point to here and even talk about a little bit is the dark side of spiritual.
Yeah.
So there's a dark side of religion, and then there's religion can serve a purpose, has that possibility. And then there's spiritual that can serve a purpose and has a possibility. But there's also, they both have a dark side. Does that make sense to you? Or are you just completely...
No, it's absolutely true. There's two sides to every coin, right?
Yeah.
And it's very subjective to the person who's looking at the coin. Which side is the right side and which side is the other side? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm in no way attacking organized religion, because I think that it does a lot of good. It helps a lot of people in certain ways. And at the same time, it is important to understand that you have to transcend it. And here is what is being said in 2 Corinthians 3:16. It says, and this is important because this is making us ministers of a new covenant. It says, not that we are competent in ourselves to claim that anything comes from us, but our competence comes from God. And he has qualified us as ministers of a new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. And again, what he was coming to do is free us to be authentically spiritual, not based on following all the laws. Because in the Jewish religion, there are over 600 laws, and their scripture says if you break the least of those laws, you might as well have broken them all. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like integrity, 99% on the kind of world of integrity, if you have integrity or not. If 99% integrity equals 0.
And look at what we're talking about. We're talking about aircraft that have screws that are falling out of the engines. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. One screw or one spoke on a wheel. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, those are all good guidelines for us to find our way toward what is being described here as we becoming members and ministers of a new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. And so the spiritual aspect of this whole thing elevates us into a realm beyond what we can learn from teachers to the inner teacher, the great inner teacher, our relationship with our Creator, with God, with Christ, with that, as opposed to having an external relationship with people and depending upon them for our source of understanding and insight. We have the ability to see things for ourselves, and that is the fulfillment of the entire thousands of years of prophecy and of teachings being handed down from one prophet to another. The fulfillment of those things is for us to be able to see things for ourselves and know the truth that sets us free.
That's deep. Yeah. That's profound. And I'm going to bring it back to the dark side of the spiritual, because that's on the other side of what you just said. The spiritual realm, in my experience, isn't just all positive lights and angels and good things. So people are like, oh, I'm spiritual. Mm-hmm. It's the spiritual world is full of, you've got dark and you've got light, you've got evil, you've got the lightness, you've got it's not just one thing. Like I was having one really new religion, I'll call it, that a lot of people are now engaging with is, I don't even want to call it plant medicine, but that's the term people use, because I don't know that it's not necessarily medicine, but I think that's packaged. That's like calling an egg rather than what it actually is, which is a chicken's period. So we called it what it was. Yeah, I'm eating. What did you have for breakfast? Oh, yeah, I had a chicken period omelet. But it's like that. But plant, like, what is it? There's ayahuasca and a whole bunch of variations of things like that. And people are going on these journeys, they call them. And that's because I know people that have really gotten into that, like full on. And when you talk to them about it, it's a religion for them.
Yeah, but see, there's a huge difference though, because there's a distinction. One is knowing God, and the other one is being God.
Yeah, there's
one
that piece of it, right?
Right?
Yeah, and that could be alcohol, that could be drugs, that could be anything where your pride is puffed up, right?
Yeah.
Your pride,
right?
And your pride, your ego is playing God in a sense.
Yeah,
you're looking for these experiences that puff you up, and you can call it enlightenment, but it's separation from God.
that's
we
right.
say here anyhow,
to be your own God,
to be your own. Yeah, your own captain of the universe, and to break out of the mold of your mind. Okay, fine. But how about, see what those kind of, and this was always my issue with Buddhism, Eastern philosophy. They didn't speak to repentance. They didn't speak to a true surrender of really laying down all of your judgments and your resentments and the playing God, your judge, jury, executioner over everyone else. And there's a better thanness. But when you come back to something, and that's what I love about Jesus' teachings, is that it actually speaks to forgiveness and redemption.
Right.
And the acceptance of suffering, not just trying to get out of it, not just trying to escape it, but you actually accept it in a way that it allows you to transcend it. Maybe the suffering doesn't go away, but you transcend something. But my point is here, in reality, these journeys that people go on. So I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who just got back from, I think it was Peru or somewhere, and did this whole journey. And he was talking about, in his ayahuasca experience, he came across, or somehow these spirits were entering his mind.
Oh, boy, that's dangerous.
But he was talking about how they were like angels, and they were of light and of spiritual greatness and all these kind of things. It was like, had the experience of seeing Jesus kind of thing, Messiah. And I was like, how do you know what that spirit you saw, that entity you saw, how do you know that isn't actually just camouflage evil? Something and that you're actually allowing into your mind and your being. You're opening yourself up to, here's my point, bring this, a spiritual realm, a spiritual world that you may not be equipped for. And if you don't have your feet on the ground and connected really to what you've been quoting and speaking to, truth and reality, and that kind of the laws, like the divine laws, so to speak, if you're not really integrated, and then the other side of it for me is, if you're really lined up in yourself, if you're whole and complete and with your creator within yourself, you don't really need to do all that. You don't need to do all those journeys per se, because the journey's right here. It's this moment, this breath, moment to moment, living true. And you actually know what to do. It's inscribed in your heart, in your being, in your mind. And developing that line of communication, not escaping that to find some new mind blow that actually blows you into a spiritual realm that you're maybe not equipped for.
Well, you're not.
And
Nobody
I know people that they're not the same after those journeys.
Oh,
they used to be bright lights and They just like, and they got weird. They came out, they just are, something's off. And I'm like, hey, Johnny, are you in there somewhere? It's like the lights are on, nobody's home. I know you've done all these mind blow journeys, but they can't hear that because it's their religion. They're fanatical about it.
Yeah.
They can't even see that they're off. They're actually not. They talk about being so present. No, you're actually not present. You can't even look at me in the eyes, dude.
Yeah.
Where'd you go? You used to be here when we have a conversation.
See, this wrong track, there's only two tracks basically. And then there's the in between those, and that takes you nowhere. But the wrong track goes the opposite direction of the right track. And the right track is leaning in to surrender to something greater than yourself.
Yeah, that's surrendering. Pride.
That's it,
ego,
right there. And
that one.
Yeah.
Take me to Peru and put me on some journey. But for me to actually admit that I ain't it.
But you
and
don't
that
necessarily...
there's something greater than me, a greater intelligence than me. Yeah.
And you don't necessarily get there.
Yeah.
Because even the scriptures have studied to show yourself approved. Okay, study as much as you want, but the studying is not going to get you there either. The studying doesn't, if you study, it doesn't necessarily reach out and open the door to that spiritual realm.
It becomes robotic.
It just becomes another thing that you
got all the verses and chapters memorized.
And this is why
you're a parrot. Yeah.
Yeah. Going back to the Pew Research poll released this month, that 41% say that they have become more spiritual. Means that what they're really doing is they've had enough of the wax fruit, which is very pretty, but it doesn't have any flavor. It doesn't have any flavor. Just there's nothing to it. Now they're reaching deeper. Now, as you said, the danger.
They're
is
yearning.
The dark
people are. When I hear that, people are turning spiritual. People are yearning for something.
They are
real.
And what it is, that's it. They're yearning for what's real, and that's what we present on this show. And on that note, I got a wrap right here.
All right, let's do it, man. Good time for it.
Yeah.
All right, you all. Thank you. Super interesting conversation, David. Thank you. This is like deep stuff. And this would make for a good like Sunday service kind of Sunday church right here.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So you all keep disrupting and rising above the drift in your thinking and your relationships and your work and your ways of showing up for your health, your well-being, your love life, your people in your life, your community in the world. Keep disrupting and challenge the norm and create a new narrative for your lives. This is Baron Baptiste signing off. Until next time, stay true, stay bold, stay blessed, and peace be with you.